Welcome to episode 83 of the Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. Michael Uhlarik from Motorcycle Global joins me from Milan to talk all things EICMA, the granddaddy of motorcycle shows. We'll address the rise of the Chinese, the resurgence of Honda, the absence of KTM, and we'll also ponder a scooter with 2 cup holders, and lots more. Because of the liberal use of video and photographs, perhaps you'd like to sashay over to YouTube to watch this episode. But first, a few words from those who make the Lowdown possible. The Lowdown Show is presented by ADV-rider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger Defend and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design, with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. Michael, it's great to see you. It's great to see you from Italy, where you are now at EICMA. I thought we could start by, for those of us who've never been, including myself, of course, I don't leave the house, so EICMA's out of the question. But maybe you could tell us a little bit about EICMA, and then as you just told me before we got on air, you've been going for 25 years. So maybe just a little bit how it's changed in your time.
Sure. So EICMA is Italy's big motorcycle and bicycle show. It used to be a biannual event, so every other year. And then starting in the early 2000s, it became annual. And EICMA is the most important motorcycle trade show in the world. Technically not the biggest, that would be China, but EICMA is where the world comes to show off what is new. This is the start and end of the global motorcycle industry calendar. So the new model year stuff is shown off, sometimes in prototype form, often in pre-production form. And that's where industry comes to make deals, to see what's new, to show off their own products if they have it, where you see old colleagues, and it is massive. This is nothing. There's nothing like this in the Western Hemisphere, anywhere in the Americas, and very few other shows in the world, in the motoring world, even including the automotive world, that are as big in terms of numbers. Like over 150,000 people will come and visit. There are hundreds of exhibitors. One of the halls at EICMA is bigger than most regional motorcycle shows in their entirety.
And how many halls are there, roughly?
There are 18.
Jesus.
This year, it has shrunken down to maybe 2/3 of that. I should say, like, there's been a trend over the last 2-3 years. It's gotten smaller. It is still epically huge. And the vibe, like for me, this is the Super Bowl. This is Christmas. This is, you choose your metaphor. I look forward to EICMA every year. I love coming to Italy, of course, but it's not Milan. It's not. This trip for me is about reconnecting with former colleagues, many of whom are friends. Companies and individuals that I work with on a regular basis, people I've known for half my life. And to anyone watching this podcast, obviously loves motorcycles, is interested in motorcycling. Imagine your best friends in motorcycling in your community, except you all work in the motorcycle industry. Engineers, sales, product planners, designers, the works. In the near quarter century that I've been coming here, it's gotten a lot bigger. It used to be in Milan proper, in the old convention center. And it was a little bit like, it was a convention center built in the like 50s or 60s. So it was a little shabby by the time I started my career in the late 90s.
I thought you were going to say the 12th century. It seemed 1950 seems really new in Milan, but anyway.
By Italian standards, Milan is pretty new.
Right.
A Roman looks at Milan like, oh, the new town.
Mm.
So the new convention center was built in like, I don't know, about 10, 12 years ago. And it's a state-of-the-art facility, and it's big, and it got easy to get to from the airport, and parking and stuff like that. But the old one was fun in the sense that it was a little bit grubby. And I would say this to anyone who's never been to a show of this scale or let's say of industrial importance. Because it's really not about the consumer, it's about people in business, in industry. They really try very hard. Well, let's say the intent is to try very hard to keep the public out. The idea is that we're supposed to come in there dressed for business, do business, have meetings, look at things. But Italy being Italy, to go in on the first 2 or 3 days, you need to do this whole accreditation process where you submit your name and the company you work for and what industry sector you work in, and they like review you if you're worthy, and then you pay a ton of money and you get this pass. But in the old Fiera, the old convention center was right in the center of town. I remember going with Yamaha people when I was still working there, and we're all together, Japanese and Europeans, and we've all got our badges and everything, I's dotted, T's crossed. And we look across, there's a bunch of teenagers in hoodies and with school bags. They're just being waved through on like industry day. Today, there's like digital turnstiles. And yet, even yesterday, which was press day, so theoretically, really just, the very limited access. I saw a lot of individuals who weren't old enough to, legally drink. Obviously, very important influencers who were there on their press credentials. So, some things have changed.
Well, it's good to see that. I mean, it's good to see that there's a certain unruliness that still reigns supreme in Italy. So I'm happy to see that. Now, you've talked a lot about in stuff you've done for ADV Rider and our discussions and previous podcasts we've done about the changing motorcycle landscape.
Yeah.
And how does EICMA now reflect that?
I mean, it's a Chinese motorcycle show. I thought a lot about this today in the context of this conversation. Look, this is ADV Rider, which means we're supposed to be talking about motorcycles and adventure. And in this community, there's often a lot of rhetoric about, politics and people's feelings about China. This is not, we're not going to go there. The reality is every single motorcycle in that trade show had high degree of China content. And I would say, if I had to venture a guess, I'd say 40 or 50% of the entire motorcycles there were straight up made in China. So, the biggest change today, this year, post-COVID, let's say the last 4 or 5 years versus before, is there were always, like going back 25 years, I remember 2001 or 2, the government of China as a state, as a country, rented a space, and it was just called China. And they brought 4 manufacturers.
Right.
Zhongshan, Longxin, Lifan, and another one. And that was it. They each had those, you go to any local trade show, they had the like 10 by 10, a card table, a bunch of catalogs, and like one vehicle each. And everyone went, ha, ha, ha.
And that was, sorry, 6 years ago?
No, like 2001, 2003,
okay, I see,
something like that.
20 years ago.
20 plus years ago.
Right.
And it crept and it crept and it crept. And now, storied Western legacy brands, Benelli, Morbidelli, Mondiale, they're 100% Chinese. They're not just that the products, the motorcycles themselves are made in China and engineered in China. The companies are owned by Chinese conglomerates, and they just use the name. And I shouldn't say that. That sounds pejorative. That's not true. let's take Benelli. Benelli is part of QJ, Qianjiang Group. They have a design center here in Italy, tremendously talented, international bunch of designers and technicians that work on the bikes that have input in the engineering, certainly in the handling and product placement, like product planning. And that's true to some degree, more or less, for all of them. But then aside from that, you know, you have you have brands like CF Moto, which is in its own right a unashamedly Chinese company, proudly Chinese, making, frankly speaking, breathtaking products in terms of quality, design, engineering, capability, and of course, very attractive pricing. You know, and then we could extend this to talk about any other motorcycle company. You know, BMW has strong connections with Lonsin. Lonsin makes motors for them, in some cases, whole vehicles. They do complete CKD vehicle productions, including this, you know, very important GS for Asian market is completely manufactured in China for Asia. You know, and so, you know, and of course we know that there's high China content in Harley Davidson, high China content in every single motorcycle. You cannot reverse engineer any contemporary motorcycle pretty much in the world and not find, and where it used to be always like non-important stuff like plastics or a handlebar. Now it's ABS modules, it's electronics, it's software. Never mind things like casting and you know, aluminum parts and whatever. So, you know, the EICMA is a global show. The world comes here. Europe is the most competitive motorcycle market, period. End of story. There are more brands from more countries competing in the European marketplace than anywhere else. Americans who think they, you know, can talk a big game about, you know, open markets, free markets. This is a free market.
Of course, there are a couple of non-Chinese brands that we're going to talk about. One of them being Honda. And you said to me recently that once you're very excited about Honda's electrification, and that's not the image I want. Where did it go?
Well, that is an electric Honda.
That is an electric motor. So, you know, let's just say that's the one I want. Now, oddly enough, I've never seen a picture of this before, but I looked at it and thought Honda before I even read the badge. So whatever they're doing, it's still very Honda-like. So what's the significance of Honda getting into electric motorcycles in the way that they're doing it? Because we've heard it seemed like, at least to me, there was all these startups all over the place, the little brands, Zero and so on. But the major brands sort of dipped a foot in, and Honda was surprisingly, at least seemingly to me, surprisingly quiet, at least to me in the West, about electrification. So have things changed?
Things have absolutely changed. So I started my personal journey of motorcycling really despising the Honda brand. It never resonated with me on four wheels as a kid growing up, even though I recognized that a lot of Honda cars are superb, particularly in my generation, you know, 80s, early 90s. And knowing that the motorcycles were very, very good. But it's only later in life with sober reality that it sinks in. Look, there is the motorcycle industry, and then there is Honda Motor. And I've come to realize I have to park my emotions and my biases. Honda is the motorcycle industry. Almost 1 in 3 motorcycles sold in the world is a Honda.
And what's the number? It's like 20 plus million.
It's about 20 million out of 63 million new bikes sold last year. Think about that. Think about that. Not, oh, well, you know, there are only whatever 5 major or 8 major brands in cell phones, or there are only however many companies manufacturing some other industry. The motorcycle industry has over 1,000 unique brands globally, and 1 in 3 wears the red wing. So coming back to your question, why is it important? Now, a lot of people have strong feelings, negative feelings about electrification. I'm not here to.
You've read the comments too, Michael.
I have.
You have. Good for you. Very nice.
Yes, and I'm not here to litigate that because that's not my job. My job is to present the facts. So you asked, why did Honda, why were they so slow? You have to understand how Japanese companies and industry work, in particular the giants. And in our business, there are 4 Japanese brands, but there are 2 that really are head and shoulders above the rest, which is Honda and Yamaha. And Honda is, 5 times the size, or 4.5 times the size of Yamaha. They are consensus people as a culture, and consensus driven and very fact driven. They knew electrification was coming, and they went in deep on the small commuter side, mopeds to you and I, mostly in China, when that market was emerging 10 years ago. Big, what we consider big, proper motorcycles. This is the first electric motorcycle from any serious company. And before someone starts crying Harley Davidson, I will restate the sentence. From a serious company. This motorcycle represents a return to what Honda is so good at. It was a crushing demonstration of superiority.
Oh, they're an engineering company, aren't they?
They're an engineering company. And I sent you a picture where they had a whole wall with the V3, and there was a tagline, something like, from engineering minds to your heart since 1948. And you're like, well, that's it. These people, since Soichiro Honda, absolutely passionate about machinery, about excellence. Now, the stats on this bike, you can go to another site for that. Is it expensive? Is it good enough? What's the range? The point is, it's a Honda. It won't ever break. It won't ever catch fire. It will work as perfectly on day 18,000 as it did on day 1. There's a dealer in every village from here to the Arctic to Kuala Lumpur. And the fit and finish is superb. You know that the ride will be sublime. And this particular model, this particular photo shows one with some accessories on it, because all the other models they had on display were black and they didn't photograph well. This one had a color. But, the video monitor behind it said, "What is a motorcycle?" And the voice then went on to talk about the things that everyone who ever rode a motorcycle feels, the sense of exhilaration and freedom and all this thing. But all I can help but think was, whoever their marketing team, the subliminal message is, what is a motorcycle? It is a Honda. And to me, this is the gauntlet being dropped. Oh, the rest of you want to make an electric motorcycle? That's cute. Here's a real motorcycle engineered to a Japanese standard, to the highest Japanese standard of excellence. And it's built profitably. And that's the piece no one talks about.
Right.
The startups don't make money. Honda does not sell motorcycles that don't make money.
Let's talk about the V3, because I know a lot of people were interested in it. And it seems pretty fascinating. And when it was first announced, and here it is. Now, of course, this is not the final paint job. This is so we can look at it, but not actually see it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is there a term for that other than just general obfuscation? Do the Japanese have a term for that?
They don't. And it's something that the auto industry introduced over the last decade. It's become very trendy. I'm not sure why they did it this way. My understanding from what I hear is that the V3 is a platform, so it'll be a lineup of vehicles.
Oh, I see.
And they're just launching with this Hornet, which is, in Europe, certainly in Asia, the nameplate they use for high performance naked roadsters. Look, it's an electric supercharged V3. I don't really understand how that works or what that's meant to do, but I have faith that it'll be the usual Honda trope of, passing the latest emissions, while delivering ferocious power that is somehow strangely also malleable and controllable to a novice in the rain.
Yeah.
you know, all things to all people. And the crowd was deep. Like people were really interested in this vehicle.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying from click to curb. Everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger in some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe, worst of all, waiting for hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? Well, that era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and do-it-yourselfers because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs to trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it, start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital. So you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership, no more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle plates and paperwork shipped to your door, ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process, designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling your ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still own your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated. So you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast. And you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the fifth, "Is it still available?" message. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups, buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services LLC, an eBay subsidiary. The Lowdown Show is presented by ADVrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger Defend and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design, with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. Michael, when Enfield debuted images of the Flying Flea, as they called it, their electric bike, you were very gung-ho on it, and you got to see it in the flesh, in the metal, and of course, that's not it. That is. What are your thoughts upon seeing it? Are you still as excited about it?
More.
Tell us about it.
Royal Enfield is just hitting it out of the park, one vehicle after another.
It seems like they can't. It seems like they can't screw it up, can they?
They have incredibly smart people. You interviewed Mark Wells, someone I know well, a brilliant person. They have a lot of brilliant people, and they listen to their brilliant people. They took a historic brand, and Europe is chock-a-block of historic brands, but they actually did something with that history. They created a narrative that wasn't fixated on a technology, on a type of frame, on a type of motor, but on a vibe. And they've distilled it into the styling of their vehicles. The Flying Flea is, and photos don't do it justice. The material quality of this motorcycle it's so beautiful. There's so much richness in the shaping of all those aluminum castings, that front girder fork with the internal springs. That's Mark probably said this on your, I don't recall exactly, but Mark is a great lover of British motorcycle history. And you go to the British National Motorcycle History Museum, and there's like 1,000 bikes in there. Royal Enfield was an early innovator, like the first bike with a monoshock rear swing arm, and they had all these curious front ends. And so they've gone and done a modern, and this is not retro design. This is modern engineering, modern design. It's lightweight. It follows all the principles that a good engineer, a good designer would to make a great motorcycle. It just happens to be powered by electrons. And yet it still feels like a Royal Enfield. It still feels like it's crafted. There's a definite human touch. And as I said, it's the finishes. And you could say, well, okay, Harley has great finishes. That's true. But they were not as good at translating what made Harley Davidson feel like a HD into the live wire, whereas I feel certainly, and the crowd and the media seem to agree, that the Flying Flea does capture the stance, the proportion, the sort of the ratio of painted, I'll call it body part, but or just like styling components. It's not a fuel tank, but the tank on this versus the amount of mechanical styling, which in this case is largely a big, beautiful heatsink battery casing, which is also functional. And that's great design.
One motorcycle that people are really keen on is the new Kawasaki, the KLE 500. And of course, you got to see it. So what's it like up close?
It's beautiful. It's really, really very well done. And I mean, look, the Japanese all have been making extraordinarily high quality motorcycles for longer than most of us have been alive. When I say it's beautiful, I mean, the photos don't do it justice. It's got some really genuinely almost delicate surfaces. And I don't mean like fragile, I just mean it's a bike you want to touch. It's very tactile. It's a lot better looking than most, in my opinion, ADV bikes. The other thing I would say is, and this is pertinent to the community on advrider.com. Look, this is not for you. This motorcycle was made for everyone else. The people who comment on ADV Rider are hardcore, or at least that's what they communicate. And this bike is going to be very capable.
I think it's exactly for them, Michael. I think we all like to talk about KTMs and either good or bad and hardcore bikes, but most of us want to sort of a gentle bike.
That's it. This is like the king of the hill was the Tenere 700, but that's 5-6 years ago now, and it's great. But this is newer and it's clearly lighter. And although they didn't release a lot of technical information or pricing, but I can show. I mean, I could tell you that it was built to a price, because that's how you make money in the motorcycle industry. Which, despite what KTM was trying to do, this is a for-profit industry. People do need to actually make money. And one of the ways you make money is you make products that don't break, so you don't have recalls, which are very expensive. And the other way you make money is by not wasting it. So no, it doesn't have a dry sump, and it doesn't have a single-sided swing arm, and it doesn't have all the other farkles. It has enough technology to be more than adequate for 95% of people. The ground clearance doesn't meet your exacting requirements or whatever. The weight is 4 kilograms more than some other bike. Well, then, I don't know, maybe don't have a hamburger tonight and have a salad, and there's your 4 kilograms.
We talked a little bit about China in the opening, and we're going to show a whole bunch of bikes that come from China, including not the Kawasaki, but this Sim ADV scooter. And you don't have to necessarily speak to each one of these. I'll just put the images up, but just some general observations about the amount of ADV-style motorcycles, including these very handsome Marinis that really appeal to me for some reason. They're really
good looking.
They look lovely, and these are designed in Italy and made in China, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so the ADV bikes were 10 a penny. They were everywhere. And, this has been said by many people over and over again. They are not the SUV of motorcycles. They're the UJM of motorcycles. And to anyone under the age of 50, that means universal Japanese motorcycle. They're no longer Japanese, so I guess they're the universal Chinese motorcycle. They're steel frames, long travel suspension, upright handlebar. But if you look at the riding triangle, so the wrist, hip, ankle relationship, it's not too far afield from a CB, not CB, but like a Japanese naked roadster motorcycles. They didn't call them roadsters, they just called them motorcycles.
Yeah.
Between 1965 and 1985. slightly wider, more open handlebar stance, and elevated, of course, higher seat, higher foot peg, but the general relationship was the same. People are buying these bikes because they're comfortable and easy to live with and easy to use. This is, of course, their Dakar bike. This is a Cove branded motorcycle. What a lot of, again, media don't always report, because this is not something that is, it's not a secret, but it's not something that is regularly put out there, is, what is Cove? What is, I'm trying to think, brain farted, but like a lot of these brands, 10th largest motorcycle company in the world. This is Indian, not Chinese, but it is an ADV, it's their Dakar bike, and they have small Royal Enfield Himalayan-esque Hero 450. Looks very similar to the Himalayan, just a little more contemporary. The market in the world is saying we're comfortable with this type of motorcycle. And that's great news for motorcycle manufacturers, because they're really cheap to make. Steel pipe frame.
Yeah, explain why.
Steel frame, low performance components. And by low performance, I don't mean low quality. I mean, these are barely adjustable, sometimes depending on the category or price, non-adjustable shocks. The swing arms are often steel, pressed steel, or if they're aluminum, they're like a single casting. And all that is to say is, it's not trying to be a GS. It's not trying to be a KTM. It's trying to be a really good street bike that, yeah, you could take off-road, just like you could take a CB 750 off-road. I mean, a guy went around the world 3 times on a Yamaha R1. So you don't actually need all this off-road ability to go across the Sahara.
Oh, don't say that, Michael. You're ruining the ruse here.
I know.
You need everything.
And of course, the secret that's not a secret is that if you look at this Marini, and then you look at the Marini Roadster and the Marini Sport model and the CF model, the CF Moto Sport Bike and the CF Moto, you have the formula is you make 2 or 3 engines, you make 2 or 3 chassis, and then you just do pick and mix. And suddenly you have a 300 series ADV naked sport model, a 500, same thing, and maybe 700, same thing. And the Chinese have optimized manufacturing. Anyone who starts saying things like, "Oh, they're just copying," well, I mean, sure, I guess, no different than anyone else.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry, is a Ducati Monster really that unique anymore? And I say this as a Ducatista, as someone who owns Ducati, like, at some point you have to stop leaning on these lazy excuses. The Chinese are just really good at manufacturing. And there are a bunch of reasons why they can offer things for a lower price. It has to do with macroeconomics and, yes, government policies. The Japanese did this for 30 years. When you and I, Neil, and most of the people listening were kids and young people, the Japanese destroyed the American television industry. They annihilated the European optics industry. How are they able to make such good cameras and televisions and motorcycles and cars so cheaply? Well, the Bank of Japan played fast and loose with the price of the yen. Nobody on this podcast wants to hear that. But there's a bigger picture at play. But we cannot take away that the Chinese are really good engineers. And they just are. And they make reliable, high-performance motorcycles now and reliable, high-performance cars. And they're able to do it profitably. And so Moto Morini is nominally Italian, but really you're buying a Chinese motorcycle. And everyone wins. We get good-looking bikes to choose from at prices that are reasonable, with great performance, good looks. It employs a bunch of Italians here in Italy to keep this historic brand alive. And it employs a bunch of really nice people in China who, if you met them, you'd probably get along with and share great stories about rides. And they get to make these products. So it's a win-win all around.
Of course, a trade show can't be a trade show unless there's some oddities. So I'm going to throw up some weird things. These are photographs you took. And this is the, what does it say on there?
Oh,
Schaeffler, we pioneer motion. And this is a very austere looking thing. It looks like it could get like a hysterectomy off this motorcycle. What's going on here?
So I was actually directed by a commenter on ADV Rider who asked me to specifically seek out the Schaeffler hybrid. So this is a Husqvarna 401 that has had a date with a rather, an angle grinder. And they removed the center shock and put in what they told me was an alternator starter from a car. Which runs down a belt to the final drive, and a pretty sophisticated electronic suite, and that's the battery module on the trail. It's not meant to be consumer good. It's meant to say that they've tested this to say that, maybe hybrid is a way to go. Last week, the Japanese went, Yamaha in particular, but Kawasaki for some years now, into hybridization of motorcycles as a stopgap to full electrification. And Schaeffler is a French company that was, out there showing this thing off. Had a really lively conversation with them. They were really lovely guys.
How do you feel about the hybrid motorcycle? Is there anything in that?
I don't think it makes a lot of sense to have a vehicle of any number of wheels and buy and pay for two complete powertrains.
Right.
It's a lot of added cost, a lot of added complexity and mass. Everyone will go, because that guy's a EV in big EV pockets. And they're not wrong. But the reality is that for most commuter applications, an EV motorcycle is already more than sufficient. And if you really want to do long distance riding and touring, I got to say, just stick with combustion, like pure combustion right now until the next step change in energy density. This seems like an answer to a question that not a lot of people asked, but they were really good. They know what they've got. They say that the weight penalty was only 20 kilograms, and that it got 15 to 20 pure EV kilometers if you put it in full EV modes. The idea is some cities don't allow combustion vehicles into the center, so you could use it as an EV. And then when you get out into the suburbs, you can just pin it and ride it on gas. So maybe.
Very specific applications, perhaps. This is the, what is it? The Type 1. Can't wait to see the Type 2. But the Type 1, if you hit someone on this, they're going to be covered in whatever beverage you have in the cup holder. Glass of Chardonnay, maybe. Maybe a porter, something dark for protection.
Yeah.
Is this real, or is this somebody just pulling our leg?
It appeared to be real. This company had a whole lineup of electric mopeds. They were Chinese. And the styling on some of them was actually quite mature, quite good. The quality was excellent. I couldn't get an answer from the presenter because they didn't speak Italian and they sort of spoke English as to why it had twin cup holders and why those cup holders were in front of the motorcycle. Like, were we meant to use it to deliver drinks? Like, and then silently back away? Like, it was interesting. And if you could sort of, I tried it, sit and reach over the handlebar and grab a water bottle. I did try it. So is the second water bottle for the passenger? Are they reaching over me and the handlebar to get their beverage? Life is a mystery, Neil.
Well, lack of hydration is a killer. So it's good to keep your fluids up. And of course, the surreal style vehicle model, which is what it says on the side cover of this. Is it a pannier cover, sort of? Or is that a medical kit?
Also unknown and unknowable. This was from a manufacturer called Tailg, which is a very mature, very good, high quality Chinese electric motorcycle manufacturer. They started out making combustion vehicles. They probably still do in China. But this was one of their high concept models, and it looks like a pannier, but wasn't. It looks like a cover that, like you say, it should open and reveal something. As far as I could tell, it didn't. And mecha, of course, is a reference to Japanese anime cartoon robots. but it's also a surreal style vehicle model. So I think they're just being direct. They're telling us what it is.
And, you know,
I admire them for it. You know, they're bold.
if you have to ask, you just don't get it.
That's it.
And of course, this is the vehicle that I call identity theft, because the only marking on it is the suspension manufacturer. They're very proud of their Olin shock, perhaps an Olin's fork. You can kind of see what they're going at, and they kind of got close to it, but it does look a little back sheddy, doesn't it?
I don't want to be unkind.
Oh, come
This
on,
was
you enjoy being unkind.
Well, this was at the Olin stand. And the people at Olin's are lovely, and they make, as everyone knows, the world's best
Jewelry
suspension. They just recently got a new owner. They are now part of the Brembo group. So they are now themselves under the umbrella of Italy's greatest motorcycle components manufacturer. And they had somebody suggest this concept vehicle, and it was not real. It was just a model, like a styling model.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And they had it on their stand, and I didn't press them for whether I felt very much like a student work.
Yeah.
And anybody who so I don't think it's very mature. I don't think it's particularly innovative or even very attractive, but anyone that has the skill and the time to make something and get Olin's to put it on their stand at the world's biggest motorcycle show deserves some recognition.
Monday of this week on advrider.com, I put a little piece up and invited readers to weigh in and ask some questions of Michael. And Michael, you've pulled up ADV's site, and you've got the questions, and you've got some answers, or you're going to make things up.
I'm totally going to do that.
Yes. Either way, the floor is yours. What do we have?
Okay, so someone, Eakins, asked if there's a Yamaha RW700 or 350. No. Yamaha debuted a new R7, which is actually quite pretty, and a new to Europe YZ 125, which was really just a model from the Far East. But no new 350, no new 700 beyond the R7. A Suzuki new platform with their updated 400. Also no. Suzuki had nothing new other than well, that's not true. They had a V-Strom meets SV 650 touring thing. I say thing because it's like adventure adjacent, but it's definitely a street only motorcycle.
I think I saw a picture of that. It looked like an adventure bike, but it just with 17-inch wheels. And
that's right.
Yes. Okay.
Perfectly good, serviceable Japanese motorcycle. Sorry, and that question came from the Precious Juice.
Beautiful.
Michael and the Argonauts, I like that handle, asked me if I could put the KLE on a scale. I could not, but I was told that it's 178 kilograms. I don't know if that's wet or dry.
Okay.
But a bump. Next we down. If Bruce Wilson asked about TFT screens and when we would see them appear on smaller, less expensive motorcycles, he specifically cited the KTM 390 or on the Yamaha T7 and whether cruise control would make it into smaller bikes. So let me answer this. All of the Chinese motorcycles have cruise control and beautiful TFT screens, sometimes with touch, way ahead of any of the European stuff. Like we're talking 5,000-7,000 euro motorcycles with much better software, much better screens, much better connectivity. So it does exist, just not any of the brands like Suzuki or Yamaha or KTM. All right. Chevalier Noir asked about the Schaeffler hybrid technology, and yes,
we dealt with it. That's why you went there.
That's why I flew across the ocean
just for you,
just for Chevalier Noir. So you're welcome. Skid mark. Not going to litigate where that comes. That handle comes from.
Not going to touch the skid mark.
Not going to touch any skid marks. Is there a new two-stroke Kawasaki in play? Because he's seeing something that he thinks is fake postings on YouTube, etc. I'm sorry to report, Skidmark, it is fake.
Oh,
I'm
fake.
going to tell you right now, the two-stroke is definitively done.
Oh, my.
You know, we all grew up in a cloud of blue smoke, some of it from our fathers puffing on Rothmans, some of it from a chainsaw, and a lot of us on two-stroke motorcycles, but they're gone and they're not coming back.
Man, I don't miss them, but that's just me.
Any news on a new KTM 690 Adventure Rally? And the answer is KTM was not present at EICMA, and I think that's important for listeners to know. KTM is a very important brand in the world and in the European mix. And as everyone knows, the company is undergoing massive restructuring under their new owners, Bajaj. They did not participate. Let's see. Oh, W. Copa was really interested in getting the down and dirty details on the BMW 450 GS. I spoke to a lovely young lady who seemed to know quite a lot about that motorcycle. It's 7,500 euros is the starting price. It will come with cruise control as an option, but that's on a higher spec package. And the weight was 172 kilograms. Fuel capacity and seat height. She directed me to the website, which I will do the same for you.
And it's 420 cc, so it's a bit of a lie calling it a 450.
Yeah, and the last thing I'm going to comment on is Lash, who said, I'm interested in the Hoda, I think he meant Honda, CB1000 GT. Not a question, but I'm going to say what I think you're inferring there. You're interested in seeing it, knowing about it. It was a Honda product. It was beautifully made. It's a return to what, at the first 20 years of my career, was a standard category called the sports tourer. And it is exactly that. It is a CB1000 with a higher handlebar and a little fairing and heated grips and a cruise control. And if you get one, you're going to love it.
One thing that you said that sort of surprised me, which is you talked about the return of the sporting motorcycle, because we thought just like sport touring and the sporting motorcycle, you know, they've been dying off, and ADV motorcycles have completely, you know, taken over this landscape.
Yeah.
But why this resurgence?
So I wish I knew the answer to that, because my clients are going to ask me and I should probably have an answer. But,
you know, let's come up with something. Let's brainstorm.
Come up with something. So, I mean, the sport sector, superbike sports sector was dead. And it wasn't dead for a little while. It was in decline after the recession, and then it just evaporated. And it was a death. It was a suicide. You know, it was dominated by 5 brands, the Japanese Big Four and Ducati, and they got into a nuclear arms race about weight and power. And once it climbed north of 200 horsepower for 1 liter bikes, and the prices went into the high 20,000 euro, 30,000 euro bracket, they became unobtainium. And the 600s were legislated out of existence, and for the kind of performance that they had. And so they went away, and everyone said, and it's that chicken and egg thing that comes up in the bike business all the time. Well, there's no demand for small motorcycles. Well, there are no more small motorcycles that are any good, then there aren't any sales. And marketing guy goes, there's no sales, so there's no demand. So someone has to break the mold and say, well, I'm going to try it. I could make the argument that it was Aprilia with the RS660 that said, hey, look, we're going to take a pretty plebeian ADV motorcycle engine and put it in a shit hot frame and tune it so that it handles like a razor, and put a really cool race replica, you know, our Aprilia body on it that kickstarted this. Because then you get Yamaha making the first of the new R7s, which is again the Yamaha parallel twin that is in everything from the Tenere to the you know, MT-07. Nice engines, but not particularly high performing. And they packaged these bikes into formats that were, well, normal, sporting, in the hands of any rider, skilled or not, plenty of fun, but still usable, decent ergonomics. Yes, you're leaning forward, but you don't need to see a chiropractor when you get off. Seats that actually have cushions, you know, reasonable tank range. Well, the Chinese clearly saw an opening, because all of them and CF Moto led this with their 450. They're beautiful.
And that's a 450 4-cylinder, is it not?
450 4-cylinder. I mean, Kawasaki and in Japan and in Europe have their 400 Ninja, which is some engineering jewel.
The 4-cylinder
masterpiece.
Yes.
Masterpiece. But, you know, it's expensive because it's an engineering masterpiece. The Chinese are like, no, guys, you're getting it wrong. It's like the Japanese forgot what made them strong in the 80s. Sporty enough, just enough technology. And here's the thing I want to end this podcast with. Generations turnover. You know, the boomers largely drove the consumer, the cruiser market in the 90s, and, you know, the cruiser boom that went right up until the Great Recession. Generation X largely drove the ADV market. I don't believe millennials have any affinity to motorcycling at all. Generally, I mean, these are generalizations, of course. But, you know, Gen Z, I'm sorry, I'm Canadian. Gen Z, who are now, you know, in their 20s, they like risk in life more so than millennials did, who don't like any kind of risk. And they like sport bikes and they like sporty things. And, you know, they also don't have a lot of money. And so, you know, they've kind of gone back to this, like this generational turnover that they're not interested in brand. They don't give a damn that in 1907 you won the TT. The what? You know, they don't care that it's a 100-year-old brand and that this is a resurrection of the famous. They just look at a product and go, is it cool?
Yeah.
And they're digital natives. They want TFT screens. They want the thing to pair to their phone automatically. They don't want buttons, and they don't want, 12 engine maps. They want the bike to know that it's raining outside and to put it in rain mode. And so the Chinese are making relatively low tech, not low, medium technology sport motorcycles wrapped in really provocative, in some cases, genuinely beautiful styling at prices that are really attractive. They're much better than the European small sport bikes. Like, forget the RC 390 or whatever. Like, these are really, they look and feel like proper 600cc sport bikes from the 90s. They've got the big tire, the big suspension and stuff like that, but they're affordable and they're drivable. They're drivable as normal street bikes that just happen to have a sporting flavor. And they were everywhere, and there were crowds around them. So as an old Gen Xer who loves sport bikes, this warms the cockles of my cynical heart. Perhaps the motorcycle still has a future.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. Ever try to buy a car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger and some blind trust? Well, that era is over. Now, with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery. It's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Caramel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.